Hey guys, how you going? VaulSC here. We're going to take a look at a game of infiNity that will be between the Morats sectorial and vanilla Nomads. And I will be running Kornak and his squad of merry men, or monkeys, or Morats, or whatever you want to call them. So we'll be the pain train featuring the tactical awareness, HMGs, and all of that fun stuff. This is, an archetype. It's a special list that obviously a few factions have variations of, notably the Invincible Army, Tactical Awareness, Pain Train kind of thing. There are a lot of factions out there that can do it. You've got the Heavy Infantry Squad. It's a limited insertion list. You're wanting to make that beefy Alpha Strike with your really brutal link team full of awesome toolbox options and win the game with some sort of punishing attack or just a really strong defense because you've got really good arrows with your heavy infantry. This turns out to be a little bit of a one-sided game. Sometimes I don't post my one-sided games where I lose or when I win because there's not too much that can be learned from them. But I do want to cover this one because the train actually looked quite good, so visually it was quite a good game. And I do have a few points of learning and commentary that I want to include, so we will go through it all. But yeah, the main thing is that when you run these kinds of limited insertion lists, it's quite often going to be an absolute blowout because you just walk over the other side of the board. You've got 13, 14 kind of orders to really just devastate them, and you're really just blowing away any possible ARO piece that may get in your way, and your opponent doesn't really have much of an army to respond with, and it might not be a very enjoyable game for them, thanks to the tactical awareness rule, which is not something I totally agree with, as I've said in previous videos. But it also may happen the other way. Your opponent comes out with a Swiss Guard or Hack Tower or Noctifer missile launcher that you weren't expecting. It hits the entire link team. They get a good roll. All your stuff blows up, and you're still pinned down by that missile launcher for anything that survives. Or maybe you run into a particularly nasty hacking network that you weren't expecting, or something comes out of the blue, or maybe you just have some terrible dice rolls and your link team's stranded, and you just get crushed, and it's not really that much fun for you. So that can happen. I've had some games where it's been pretty close, but again, there are far more games with this kind of pain train archetype of lists where it just really blows out either way. Still, we're going to do it, and it's a safe area, so this mission is quite good for that kind of style where you really just want to destroy them by the end of the game. Doesn't matter whether you're going first or second a lot of the time, because you've got 3 turns of just pressing that win button on your big pain train, and hopefully that button does work for you. So how do we do it then? This list has changed a little bit since I first started running it, and if you guys have been following my YouTube channel for a while, you will have seen me put Kornak and his boys out on the field a number of times in the past, but only once or even twice since the rules got changed to include tactical awareness. So these days, this is what I'm going to be running. Kornak, obviously the lieutenant. Raktarak, the nice cheap specialist that helps bring down the cost of the team, but adds a Vulcan shotgun as well, really important. 2 HMGs. You don't have to run 2, you don't have to run 1. That number is going to be between 1 and 3. If you're really crazy and you want to run 3, that's the maximum tactical awareness that you can reasonably get away with. If you only run 1, well, that allows you to put in a heavy rocket launcher and maybe the multi-rifle. I like to run 2 of them plus the multi-rifle, and the only reason I run the multi-rifle over the alternate version, which is the 3rd HMG or the rocket launcher, is because it's very important for me for the team to have something with shock ammunition in there. The last thing you're going to be wanting to do is come around a corner, fire at some random Gazi Motiwa. Gazi Motiwa rolls like a 7. You manage to get 2 hits through. He passes 1 armor save, and the other one causes him to go into dogged, and then you've got to spend an entirely new order going in and shooting him again. Noting that some of your hits won't, get past the dice roll he makes with a smoke grenade. I mean, the multi-rifle low, you get 1 hit through and he's gone, and you can spend the orders moving in to kill the rest of their army. So I think that's a really big deal when your plan is just to bowl over in towards their deployment zone and just gut their order pool. There's a single Dacheratze in there with chain rifle smoke grenades. I feel that that is kind of important to have because, again, you may be locked down by an ARO you didn't expect. Let's say you move out, that Swiss Guard missile launcher traps you and shoots you. Well, the game might be over and done with by then because you got blindsided and your link team blows up. But what if that Swiss Guard just rolls like a 19 or a 20 and whiffs the shot? Well, you're still in a whole bunch of trouble because if you activate again, it's going to fire again and your link team's in trouble. But if you've got that Dutch Ratzi nearby, if you manage to come off clean against that surprise ARO, your Dutch Ratzi can then throw a smoke grenade blocking the line of fire. You can move your link team to safety and then reroute that attack so you're only sending in one HMG at a time, firing at that enemy target and possibly killing it. And because you had that smoke grenade available in your list, there's an opportunity to turn the game around. And it's really important to design your lists for these kind of eventualities where you've got a very powerful, list if there's a default game, but you want to have little bits of tech, ways of actually helping your army out if you run into your bad matchups, the counters. Mid-tech has to be there because if you're taking second turn and you lose a couple of guys while AROing, you want to be able to revive them. Or if you get maybe hacked and immobilized somehow. These guys are immune to jammers and isolation, that kind of thing, oblivions, which is part of the big reason why I prefer them over the Invincible Army version. Invincible Army does have a much better hacker and it has more orders to spend and a better toolbox in some ways, but Kornak and the squad being immune to isolation is just a real godsend for this kind of play because you're having to go towards their jammers. But yeah, medtech really important. And also again, if you're up against that dreaded Kamau sniper on a link team, you start the turn by approaching it with one of your Soviet HMGs. You're basically 5 dice and 13s versus 2 dice and 16s. If they win and you go unconscious, you need that medtech to revive them so that you've got more attempts. Single Krakot Renegade, I felt that with just 16 points left after I took the Morat Hacker and the Q Drone, that this would be the way to go. You've got something which is already outside of your deployment zone. You're not having to move it around very much if you're doing a quadrant control style mission. And he's got that chest mine to help out with a little bit of defense, and he's also, just an all-round good piece for that. So rather than taking another Dacharatsi or something like that, I put the Krakot in. The Hacker and Q Drone, it's just very helpful to defend the deployment zone, not in terms of watching the table, but watching for drop troopers and things that might outmaneuver your link team. So I thought that was important. Also, if you run your link team over and just bash a lot of their snipers and HMGs, if you scalpel them out, having that Q drone at the back, if you've got one order remaining, you could put the assisted fire on the Q drone and start watching the table with it, and your opponent may have actually run out of things that can shoot back at it. So your Q drone's actually watching part of the approach to your Kornak squad, which happens to be in one corner of the table in their deployment zone. So as they're sending all their impetuous troops over to hit you with chain rifles and flamethrowers and whatever it may be, your Q drone may be very helpful there. One alternate list that I tried putting together was swapping the multi-rifle for a rocket launcher and swapping the Q-drone and Morat for things like the OSNAT with synced Predator, which I still haven't tried yet. But I like this because the sensor could be very good for preparing the camo markers for Kornak to devastate them, but also because that Predator is a very good expendable piece for defending your deployment zone. Despite that though, ended up going with this lot, so that's currently what I prefer for this this kind of build. Running through my opponent's list, he's just attempting a few things. This is not his actual list, this is just a recomposition of some of the things that I knew were in there. It's short by 19 points because I wasn't really sure what he spent the rest of his points on. But I think he took the following things: Daktari, standard; Heckler, standard; Puppet Master, for counterintelligence and nothing else, 12-point cheerleader, standard; Securitate, Lieutenant Decoy, fine. He's playing the Custodia. I think that the Interventor or Merry Problems is better and more cost efficient for hacking and fighting, but he's bought this as a new model and wanted to test it out. Sin Eater, we know that Sin Eaters aren't really the best thing in the game because they can only be used defensively, not offensively, and that is a weakness. And when you're just sitting them out watching the table, they are still very vulnerable to any old pleb with a smoke grenade and an HMG and MSV2. That specific combination will really ruin the Sin Eater's day. But if you can keep this guy alive for a bit and make him useful in the turns 2 and 3, he can really ruin your game if you have run out of options to deal with him. Transzon, standard; Zonbot attached to the Daktari. I don't know if this Fort Observer 0 was actually in his list, but I think he did have an extra 0. 4 Morlocks, he's recently bought this and trying out the Assault Pistol, probably given that was my advice. Hellcat HMG, I like it. Other people prefer the Spitfire or the Combi Rifle. It's good to try the HMG once in a while, and that E-Mauler can be the thing that you use when you are at the short range and can't use the HMG as effectively, and of course the staple Krakot. So let's get into it. we'll go through the game, and I'll just give you a rundown of what happened, although again, this game was a bit on the shorter side. So, rolled the dice, managed to win, took first turn right off the bat, because that's what I'm wanting to do. This is a look at the table from the from one side, a bit of a blurry photo, but again, with this scenario, you've got the 4 quadrants, so we see that they're here, and divided up like this. So you've got to end the game having captured more than your opponent. So let's say if you've gone through and you've grabbed this one, and this one, and this one, but your opponent's only got that one, then you'll win the game, because that's a massive swing of objective points. But you can also end up with a specialist space contact with one of these consoles to get, I think, a point per console, I think, if I recall correctly. There's also the Intel Com card, which still annoys me that it's an actual thing. Intel Com card can be used to put, say, the number of points into a particular zone after you sort of send your troops there, which is RNG, just random card draw. Don't like it. Or you can negate the specialist trait of one of your opponent's troopers, so that when they put their specialist next to their objective, they don't count as being a specialist. But I digress. Let's move on. So this is a shot from the Nomad deployment zone. That's where he's going to be hiding out, and this is from my deployment zone as Morats. So with me deploying first, we'll just do a quick rundown of where things are. It's pretty basic. You've got the dock over here, Morat hacker there. Q-drone's going to be the reserve trooper, going to be going up in the sniper tower. Datrats are here to send the smoke towards this area where there might be a lot of lanes of fire for my fire team, or this side over here where it might be coming from that direction. But you've got Kornak and the boys just hanging out there, and the Krakot Renegade on this side, who I believe rolls up, I think, climbing plus or super jump. So a closer look, Doctor on the right hand side, and Morat hacker if you can't see him behind the webcam. Towards the center, you've got the Raktarak underneath the stairs, but then the HMG up top, Kornak on the stairs as well, multi-rifle at the back, another HMG on the other side. Close-ups now with Kornak and his boys on the steps. Really beautiful Mozart Terminator here on the side of the building. Don't know where he got this image from, but it's awesome. And then a bit of a zoom out over to his side of the table where he's deploying his Nomads. So let's just do a run through of that setup. On his left hand side, we've got the Puppet Master there, Daktari there, HVT out in the middle of the table, Krakot Renegade up the top here. This is, I think, a 0. That is a Prowler with Spitfire. I forgot to mention that he'd taken that model. A lot of people don't like the Prowler Spitfire because it's a little bit immobile, a little bit slow, and maybe not the best stats. But I think it's actually a pretty good model, considering that your opponent's less likely to expect it. Nomads have so many different camo markers, it could always pretend to be a mine, and your opponent may leave things out of position and susceptible to that Spitfire. Also got a Transconductor Zond sitting there. Moving through to the middle, there was that same Transconductor Zond. We have a whole bunch of Morlocks, very much primed in grey, underpainted situation. This is his Securitate, and that's the Custodial Lieutenant behind this tower over here. Another look at that will show you down the bottom. Let's just grab that pen again. So that's his Lieutenant Custodia. Got Morlock, Transconductor, and this is his Jammer, so he's got his little Jammer defense system set up. He will be putting his Sin Eater up here as the reserve trooper. My opponent making a whole bunch of Morlock rolls and actually getting NWI on 2 of them and Dogged on the 3rd one, which was pretty crazy. My reserve trooper is this Q-drone we just talked about, and his reserve trooper is this Sin Eater, positioned in such a way that he's actually responding to my the position of my Morat HMG Soyat with both of these models. So the Soyat's going to have to take on the Transconductor Zond and the Sin Eater. But again, I feel odds are going to be in my favor to go after the Sin Eater, ignoring the Flash Pulse. I've got another HMG that can come up. I've got plenty of BTS on my Soyat, so it should be okay. He's also got these really cool little model markers here for regen and metachemistry rolls, which he's actually throwing down onto his Krakot, and you can see the whole pile of them here. He's just printed them out from some website, which I was quite impressed by. Really good way of keeping track of metachemistry. So, first order of the day, it's Impetuous from our Dacheratsu friend, again throwing the smoke grenade in the direction of that sniper tower, so that if I do move out in this direction without having dealt with his Sinita, the smoke's going to cover that line off, so I'm going to be able to traverse to this side of the battlefield with Kornak and the boys if the plan doesn't work out. But the plan is to stand up with this HMG guy and directly take on that Sinita, ignoring the flash pulse from the transconductor with the first shot, as the rest of the link team is moving out, as you can see from below. So that happens, and I do get lucky here. Well, not specifically lucky. I mean, the Sinita's, I think, needing 13s on 2 dice. I'm needing 13s on 5 dice, plus I've got a ton of armor and BTS. So I do manage to win that one and knock the Sinita unconscious. And with the very next order after that, the HMG rolling down the steps and blasting the transconductor zone as well. So 2 orders spent, 2 casualties, a great start, optimal start there. But again, if it does go badly, you know, there are other ways to follow up and keep attacking his position, because you've got the orders, you've got the firepower. Don't forget, this is a list which starts with 10 orders, plus 1 for Kornak Strategos, plus 2 for the 2 tactical awareness orders, which I'm using as soon as possible. So it has a threat range of 13 orders, which is pretty crazy. So after thinking carefully for a while, I'm thinking, okay, do I head in the direction of that sniper tower and start taking on the Morlocks, potentially killing his lieutenant, or do I go the other way? And I had to really be careful about it. One thing that I don't care about is the jammers, because everybody in the Morat list is immune to you know, isolation, except for like the doctor. But one thing I'm not immune to is hacking. Now, Oblivion's not going to work out too well, but if he starts hitting me with things like just icebreakers or gotcha or carbonite or whatever he may decide to use, and that slows down my run and disrupts the team, and I don't kill enough guys, that could be just as bad, because the team would be left out in the open, and I'd basically get jumped on and shot and murdered. So I'm going to bring up this initial photo of the battlefield, and I just wanted to talk you through a little bit of strategy and tactics here. So I'm going to put a big K over here, because that is Kornak's start location. And over here in this tower, I'm going to put an S, E for Sinita. Not that the E turned out. What's just happened is Kornak has fired and destroyed a transconductor zond and a Sinita on that position. We know that there are a whole lot of juicy targets around the back of the Nomad line, which we want to kill. So if we can get in there and start blasting them with multi-rifles and Vulcan shotguns, that's great. But he also has some mysterious camo markers set up on this position here. So I'm just going to put a little C for camo. If I come within range of that, he may start hacking me, which I don't particularly want, because I don't actually have stealth, unlike the military orders link teams. So what I could do is come through this direction, but I noticed there was a camo marker here, which turned out to be a jammer, but I didn't know whether that was the jammer or maybe an assault hacker. So after pondering it, I decided, well, I do want to move out and get kills, but the only way I can really get there and be assured of getting in and getting the lines I needed was to actually come around this direction here, all the way around the side, and then jump over the back of this truck trailer. That way I'd be able to kill his Puppet Master, I'd be able to kill his Daktari, which is important because he's got a Zonbot on top of this tower where he can just revive that Sinita, which would be terrible for me. And also picking off a couple of his Morlocks on the way. And then what I could do is I could leave my link team positioned on this truck, allowing me to obviously dominate the battlefield with my Q drones position there, being able to see right through this long line, which is important, and obviously facing off from that side. So that's the plan there, and it's just so important to make this decision early on before spending all of your orders, which you have a lot of if you want this kind of list to work out. I think this is going to be a struggle for a lot of newer players who are too indecisive and get a couple of kills and leave their link team back at home where they're vulnerable, or charging through and moving your link team into the wrong part of the battlefield is another way that you can basically F this up. So with that in mind, coming back to where we were before, Kornak is going to be rolling out, and we'll see how that turns out. So Kornak just victorious here against the Sinita. Let's roll. So moving through here, there's a flash pulse bot which takes the business end of an HMG on a heavy infantry on a full link team and just gets pummeled as it expected to. Beautiful glamour shot of the boys, the squad, moving past this objective here in their effort to get through to the other side of the battlefield, as depicted by my former diagram. Then getting around to this side, and you can start to see where the juicy kills are, right? You're going to be wanting to get up onto this truck trailer. There's the Puppet Master down here. There's the Dactari there. Once you've cleared them out, by then you will have taken out like 4 or 5 regular orders anyway, and we're really starting to pull into the lead. And it's just so important to get that momentous damage done first turn. So moving up here, we're going to take on the Puppet Master with our Vulcan shotgun rack-to-rack, which is a great way of doing it. He's hitting on something like 21s with 3 dice, so a really brutal way to destroy that Dactari and make sure that there's nothing left. Then pulling up here with Kornak, and Kornak going to Bliss skill 20 effectively with the +3 for link, +3 range onto that Dactari, and it's in the rear, so Dactari, no chance whatsoever to survive. That's removed. Pulling around over here, there is a Morlock with NWI, so I'm having to bring the multi-rifle Soyat in now, and firing at him very close range, and taking the brunt of, you know, potentially a chain rifle, but I don't mind this because it's so important to remove that Morlock, because you don't want it throwing smoke grenades on top of your link team and people rushing into close combat. So blasting him with the multi-rifle, not taking a wound against the chain rifle as far as I can remember, because I think that he decided to smoke. Not 100% sure, but anyway, does manage to actually, you know what? I think this was a point in the game where he finally started having some good luck and got a crit smoke. Let's just check that. Yeah, so there's a smoke grenade. So we had to change our plan a little bit here. I'm thinking, damn, got about 4 orders left. What I could do is charge Kornak in. That will give him a chance to damage Kornak. Losing the lieutenant later in the game is not going to be too bad because I'm Morats. I'm going to have the veteran on rule on just about everything in my army. But if I go into close combat and berserk him with a DA close combat weapon and a friend in close combat, he's going to be forced to take 4 armor saves, and he's not likely to survive against that. So that was the plan. Moving directly in there with my multi-rifle buddy. So he's swinging at Kornak with his MA1. Does damage Kornak. He's only got an AP close combat weapon as far as I can recall. Let's just double check that right now, actually. Morlocks, yeah, AP close combat weapon. So Kornak does take a wound, but in return I force 4 armor saves from him, including one of them being a crit, so an automatic failure, and he does lose his Morlocks, which is quite important. And then using that last order to basically set up. So Kornak coming into here where you can see this part of the battlefield to ARO. We've got a HMG actually able to cover a huge number of lanes here. This HMG just covering that tower because there are camo markers on that tower that could attack me. Even a multi-rifle viewing over here. And because he's lost all of his heavy weapons and anything that could really gun me down, I'm feeling like this team is going to be able to defend themselves. Not to mention the Q drone that's watching this fire lane through the middle of the table, which, as I discussed with the list building component of this video, would really come in handy. So his models moving out impetuously. Again, the Q drone over the top left there, firing at the Morlocks as they move towards that corner of the battlefield where Kornak's boys are. And the Q drone just barely thwarted by a smoke grenade. And everybody else just moving out wherever they can without getting anything done. So we've got this guy over here, smoke grenades going down, just getting into position to come through and potentially go in against Kornak, but he's got a long distance to cover. What he was initially planning on doing was throwing the smoke grenade near to Kornak and then coming on the side of the table with his Hellcat with HMG. But I pointed out to him that with the E-Mauler, it wouldn't really affect my guys very much because E-Maulers have EM ammunition, and Kornak's not heavy infantry, Rack-to-Rack's not heavy infantry. I don't believe that the E-Mauler would immobilize them, just basically make them isolated, which they ignore. It would immobilize the heavy infantry, but only if I fail my dodge and fail my BTS check, so there is that. And I'm pretty sure that's how EM ammunition works. If I've got that wrong, well, My apologies, but I'm pretty sure. So he decides not to do that. Instead, he's going to drop down at the back of my line, which is a better move anyway, because that means he can actually get an easy kill onto my Morats, and an easy kill onto my Doctor, and an easy kill potentially onto my Q-Drone. So this is actually a pretty decent play, and this is a great way to play it against a heavy infantry link team which is doing well against you. Go around, kill everything else, because if that reduces them to 5 or 6 orders, they're going to have a hard time spreading themselves out to win a mission like Safe Area, where you've really got to contest 4 zones, and if you've only got 5 models to do that with, that could be real trouble. So here we go, blasting Dr. Worm in the butt. I can't even shoot back, so sad for him, he dies. As discussed, the Morats laid low by the HMG, just ripped up. And this is where I feel like he drops the ball a little bit. What he could now do is go after the Q-Drone and systematically take that out as well and make it a bit harder for me to you know, dominate the game later. But it is a bit of a risk, but I think he should have taken that risk rather than doing this. He's rather desperately going after my my Morat HMG long range, which is on the back of the truck trailer over here. So yeah, I mean, you're talking going up against a Morat who's going to need 9 teens to hit on 2 dice if he's in range, while you're hitting on like 12s on 4 dice. So it's extremely risky without cover. I'm pretty sure he should have been able to find some way to get into cover with that Hellcat, but it didn't happen. This play was made, and the Hellcat is lost at this point, which kind of seals the game by now. But I felt like there was more he could have done. Maybe he tried to have cautious moved across this little fire lane, gone after the Morat hacker with his pistol, and snuck up on the Q-Drone somehow. Maybe that would have been better. Anyway, that's it. Hellcat down, and we can pretty much fast forward here. He's moving out with his Prowler Spitfire, taking on the Q-Drone, and I feel like he should have done this earlier. This is a great play. You've got Camouflage, Surprise Attack, good range band. He actually managed to kill the Q-Drone, so that's 3 orders down for Morats. Still looking pretty bad for Nomads, but doing this kind of thing means that you really didn't need to have lost the Hellcat HMG. You could have just kept him at the back of your line, and that saves you in order to use next turn. Also, you've got the last turn, so when Kornak moves the squad out into the middle of the table just to stand there to contest the zones, in your last turn you can move out the Hellcat then and actually fire at them all and maybe kill them all and actually win. So there is that. Prowler now going after the Morat squad, and you know, like I just said, you don't have to do that desperate attempt. You can keep a couple of models left lying around. You avoid going into Lost Lieutenant, retreat rather, and even though the next Soviet turn is going to be devastating, if you just hide everything, there's still a chance of surviving. But no, goes for the attack with a Prowler. He's up against 3 heavy infantry firing back, and the Prowler just gets devastated. He does 1 wound to one of them, but other than that, he just gets ripped. So Kornak still sitting here. A Morlock coming towards the team just gets brutalized by the Morat multi-rifle. They're just having fun at this point, blapping everyone. Train rifle does go off in an attempt to kill Kornak, but Kornak does manage to survive that, and this Morlock gets gunned down. So here we are, Morat turn 2. We're down to, I think, about 6 orders, but with just the hacker moving into position with the coordinated order and the Morat Renegade, Crackout Renegade, just making sure we can test these 2 zones here for the end of the game, because we're expecting this game to really only go 2 rounds with the brutality that's about to happen. We're wanting to shore up the 2 quadrants which are closest to the Morat deployment zone, if you can see that. So these 2 models are specifically achieving that. But as I said before, if you're a Hellcat and you're able to take those guys out somehow or put your points in one of these zones, it becomes really difficult, because then the your opponent has to take these zones, and if they're just getting shot on the last turn, that might not quite work. Anyway, Morats moving out, Kornak having some fun, blasting everybody, killing everything that moves. Destroying this Securitate up here, also moving around to absolutely devastate the Heckler, who puts down a Fast Panda, and the Custodia as well. So those get ripped up as the hail of fire continues like a tidal wave across the battlefield. And here we are moving basically towards the middle of the zone, and just ending in a position where you've got the middle of the table split through here and around here as well. So if you count it up, the rack-to-rack's base-to-base contact as a specialist with this console. You've got the HMG, which is wounded out there, watching the tower. You've got the other HMG here, watching the tower. You've got a multi-rifle wounded, watching the side of the table. Kornak sitting around here. They're still a 5-man link team, so they're going to be hard to shift, really hard. So we've got impetuous moves, Morlocks moving towards the Morats, getting destroyed by arrows. SMG Krakot desperately standing up to have a go at them, again being destroyed by arrows quite handily. And that's basically it, runs out of orders. He did start in retreat, was having to spend command tokens to remove the retreat token from some units. I believe with Veteran you ignore retreat, but either way, this was a devastating loss for Morlocks. For Nomads, a Morats win, but you can definitely see how this could have gone the other way. If you get really unlucky against the Sin Eater and the Flash Pulses and don't do enough damage, Morats are going to have an easy time of it. Sorry, Perpetual. The Nomads are going to have an easy time of it. If that HMG Hellcat is played a little bit better, you might have a chance. Again, the Prowler Spitfire played a little bit more conservatively, just picking off the right targets, again, might have a chance. But in general, these big, tactical awareness lists, they have a lot of potential, but they are, feast or famine. It's either going to be a big blowout or a big loss. A lot of your games, it won't result in as many close games as your normal balanced lists will. So that's a bit of commentary that hopefully you can take away with you. Hopefully you enjoyed this game, and I think we'll be doing a little bit of an like a one-day ITS event next weekend, so do stay on the lookout for that one.